ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 31st edition of the Data Quest Digital Leadership Conclave with the theme India 2047, How to Become a Tech Superpower. In the morning, we had some really invigorating fireside chats that gave us a lot of insight on the tech side of it. But now we have a next session, which is something I think we all understand and we all really enjoy. So, the fireside chat on Can Indian e commerce go global? Let's delve into this thought provoking session, exploring challenges, opportunities for Indian e commerce companies to expand their reach beyond borders. And for this session, I have my guest, Mr. Saransh Agrawal, Chief of Staff, ONDC. Saransh has a rich experience in consulting and strategy. He has a wide expertise in policy and social impact, marketing and business development, and data analytics. Let us welcome Mr. Saransh Agrawal. Can we have a round of applause? And the session will be moderated by Dhaval Gupta, Director, CyberMedia Group. Welcoming Dhaval, and over to you.
All right. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. And, I think given that this is a post-lunch session, but I think it's a good challenge and it's accepted because I don't think anybody really wants to, miss out on, what ONDC is doing and what ONDC has been talking about for a couple of years now. And it's really a pleasure for me to be able to speak to Saransh, who has been with ONDC from day one. So he knows, he's the Karta Dharta, he's the Chief of Staff, of course, and knows all the ins and outs of what's been happening with ONDC. And I think what a lot of people keep on talking about is that, yes, it's in the news, yes, it's changing the face of retail, it's going to be bigger than UPI. But how many people here, can I just get a show of hands, have actually transacted on ONDC? 2 people. All right. So hopefully, after today's session, we'll be able to change some minds and we'll be able to get you to try out ONDC. By the way, I wouldn't be surprised if some of them you've actually done transactions on ONDC but not realized it also. So with that, Saransh, welcome. Thank you for taking out the time. Let's start by simply trying to demystify ONDC. Perhaps, ONDC has been in the news, has been talking about changing up retail. Again, I'm sort of just saying the same things, but where is the impact coming from and what is the current status of ONDC?
Sure, Dhaval. So thank you so much. And by the way, just a side note, I did a quick math. 2 out of the number of people present represents actually perfectly the e-commerce penetration in India right now. So when you say only 2 people, I see as opportunity. Great. What I will actually do is a very quick 2-minute, 3-minute elevator pitch on what ONDC is, because I think it's important to establish that and just help you understand where we are in that journey and then move forward. So what is ONDC? If you don't take away anything else from today's session, the first thing to remember, it's not an app or a platform. Statement number 1, right? That's the one thing you should keep reiterating yourself. So what is ONDC? We say it's a DPI. It's similar to UPI for e-commerce. But what does it really mean? Let me put it this way. You and I exchanged emails prior to this session. I'm pretty sure everyone else here has. If you want to send me an email, just take my email address, type out a message and send it to me. Now, you may be using your own email service. You may be opening your email on your Mozilla Firefox, let's say on a Windows laptop, right? I will receive that email. Maybe I'm using my own email provider, maybe a Gmail. I'm using it on my Chrome browser on a Mac laptop. Right now, important to understand, all of these are the big tech giants, Microsoft, Apple, Google, right? You can send me email all day. you don't have to worry about whether I'll get that email and I'll read it. Okay. Uh, the my email service or my Chrome or my Gmail might have add other services to it. Gmail has autocomplete and Chrome has pink colors or whatever. But fundamentally, we can talk to each other. Now, transpose the same thing to commerce, digital commerce. You are trying to sell any product or service. I'm trying to buy any product or service. If you're using a large tech platform and I'm using a different one, you can't send it to me. You can't sell it to me unless I join the same one or you join mine, right?
Right.
So we have these closed bubbles, which is what we call platforms or marketplaces, and our thinking usually about e-commerce is limited to that. What is ONDC? ONDC is like SMTP. So all emails work on simple mail transfer protocol. ONDC is like that protocol. It just enables all digital systems which are trying to transact anything, any product or service to each other. Now, that's a very, very technical explanation of what ONDC is. Unfortunately, it's a tech solution. But let me tell you one of my favorite things. One, it's actually very, very simple. It's none of the AI, ML, blockchain, fancy keywords are involved. It's actually very, very fundamental. It goes back to how internet was made itself. Now, what difference does it make fundamentally? I mean, e-commerce has existed in India 15 years, still continues to exist. It has existed globally. What difference does it make? And why? Uh, so one of the first thing I want to tell you about ONDC is any product or service which is catalogable is transactable on the network. Now, what does it mean? Whether you are selling food, you're selling groceries, you're selling insurance, you're selling international shipping, you are selling your services as a gig worker, you are selling workshop space, all of that is transactable on the network and you can stitch it all together. Number one. So we started this experiment, and this is an experiment. It has never existed anywhere on earth globally. We started in September 21 till January last year. Because it was still kind of the initial concept, we were doing close to 800 or 1,000 transactions per month, which is nothing because that's how small products start. We exited last month at 8 million transactions, and that's the growth in 1 year. When you're at ONDC, you think, oh, we are actually going slow. We are just starting. This is a very small piece of the puzzle. Why? Because if I have to answer in one sentence, what is ONDC trying to solve? Indian e-commerce, the one which we are all familiar with, is at best 5 to 7% of commerce in India, right? That 5 to 7%, we think, oh, this person has this much market share, that person market share. Actually, we're not worried about that. How do we take 5 to 7% commerce penetration to 40 to 50? And what change does it make? Fortunately for us, easy to explain in terms of UPI as an analogy. 6 years back, if I had walked into this room and said, I'm working on this new thing called UPI, it will make payments instant and efficient. And you were like, MasterCard and Visa exist. Payments are working. Wallets are also there. They're going great. I mean, why do we need? And I would say, there will come a day if you stop at a red light in Delhi, people will come and sell you, wipers and whatnot with a QR code, and you will be able to buy 10 rupees or 20 rupees from a vegetable vendor. You would laugh at my face. Today, we passed that reality on our way to this conference. So that's my challenge. That's what ONDC will do. Once ONDC scales, my challenge is you will not be able to imagine a world without ONDC.
Wow. And so where is the impact? You mentioned 8 million transactions. I mean, that's not a small number. And obviously, given the first year growth, I mean, it's only going to grow and grow and grow. Where is the impact coming right now?
Oh, so many stories. So first thing, so ONDC, as ONDC is a protocol. I mean, it's essentially a small tech component which either if you're an existing product or service, technology service, you can integrate into your system, or you can build something new around it. So practical examples, let's say Paytm was one of our first adopters. So today, when you go to Paytm and start shopping, that is actually ONDC, right? Uh, on the other hand, PhonePe, which is decided, oh, we will build a new app because that's the experience they wanted to build. So they built a app called Pin Code on top of ONDC. Now, we started two domains, as we call them, grocery and food, first, because everyone said that is the most challenging. Uh, the commercials don't work. Uh, it's tough. So we said, okay, hey, it's challenging. Great, let's start there. So, everything takes time to mature. And this is important to understand because as ONDC, we are not a platform. We don't bring the customers, we don't bring the sellers. We help the 50 people who are already out there, small, big, large, medium, small, to come and talk to each other and transact, right? So, uh, today we have 50 odd sell side applications. Now, they will range from something on the size of Jubilant or Rebel Foods who have that technology wherewithal to just develop the protocol themselves and implement it in their system, all the way to small players like My Store who are bringing your street vendor on board, right? That's on one side. So we have on the sell side, on the demand side, we have again 15 different applications. They range all the way from Ola and Paytm and PhonePe, all the way small down to recently we had CSC. I don't know if many of you have heard of it. CSC is Common Citizen Service Center. Every village panchayat in India has a CSC center. Now that is ONDC enabled, which means every village in India can buy digitally using ONDC any product or service available on ONDC. So a lot of the growth is coming from the core segment. So we started food and grocery; they started becoming big. We launched mobility as in ride hailing to begin with. That was a runaway success, largely because there was an innovation in business model also. Uh, Namma Yatri started in Bengaluru, where they decided that we don't need, because the technology is so simple, we don't need to charge commissions to make a profit. We'll charge a subscription, and we'll let the auto and taxi unions itself run the operations. So they are growing very strong. We started B2B transactions as a small pilot in September. We started export transactions as a small pilot in September. That is growing. Most major segments like your fashion, beauty, apparel, electronics is growing. We have significant interest coming from a lot of D2C brands who are starting. Recently, we had a wave of jewelers who are starting to sell on ONDC on a very different spectrum. 5,000 FPOs, farmer producer organizations, are selling on ONDC. Okay. Each FPO represents somewhere between 200 to 500 farmers. So you can do the math. That many farmers are now selling directly online to consumers across India.
Could you, because you mentioned a lot of different types of businesses and also food and farmers and so on, could you give a broad breakup of, what would be percentage of transactions that are urban, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, and then rural?
Okay, I'll tell you the numbers because I of course don't have dashboards in front of me, but broadly, here is what I remember. Only 30% of our business is coming from tier 1, right? Rest is all tier 2, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. I know that what this metric that we have called countable cities, which means any city which has had transactions, continuous transaction in the last 100 days. We had 800 cities right now. I think there are a few districts left in India where we don't have either sellers and buyers both. So the coverage is pan-India. And in fact, also in Singapore. So we already started that global footprint also.
Okay. So, before we get into the global footprint, and I think that's a great seg, I think one of the first partners that ONDC onboarded was Paytm. And in case, for those of you, I'm sure many of you have Paytm. If you go into the Paytm app, right at the bottom, they have an ONDC button. So if you click on that, suddenly you are transformed into the Paytm mall, which is related to ONDC transactions. And I think you'll find a lot of products or services or jewelry or food which can be fairly cost effective because you're not paying the Amazon overcharges. Coming back to now the global part of it. So the the initial idea was that okay, this is like UPI, and this is really going to enable beyond just online commerce, and it's going to be focused on bringing Bharat online, right? And when I say Bharat, obviously referring to tier 2, tier 3, not just tier 2, tier 3, more rural India. And yet, right now in the session, we are now talking about ONDC going global, right? And how can India, how can Indian retailers go global, and how can ONDC be a part of that journey? So if you can just introduce first about how is ONDC playing a role in helping Indian retailers go global?
Sure. So, and again, this is one of the key strengths and value propositions of NDC is that if, as a seller, you are once plugged into ONDC, you are visible to everyone who's on the demand side. And here is what I mean. And just to give you, just to build from the example we already talked about. Let's say I am a small FPO in a town near Meerut or a village near Meerut, and I sell jam or honey, and I'm registered as a seller on ONDC. Now, whether the ladies and gentlemen in the room use Paytm or PhonePe or MyStore or Ola, or in fact any other app which is now or probably will come in the future, which is linked to NDC, they are instantly visible in all of them. So it's not that they have to go and register everywhere. Now, extending this to global markets, we already have a Singapore-based company called Proxterra, which is actually incubated by Monetary Authority of Singapore, which is their RBI equivalent. They became the first international buyer app on ONDC, which means they again implemented the same protocol. And now they focus more on B2B because that's the use case. But now every seller in India, which is on the network, which is said, hey, I am willing to sell B2B products, is now available in Singapore. They're instantly visible in Singapore. So, first thing it solves is visibility and access.
So the Singapore company can then directly buy
Yes.
products on ONDC from Indian sellers.
Yes.
All right, and there will of course be an element of exporting and paperwork
Logistics,
and
yeah.
so on. So how does ONDC help cut through that?
No, so that is where the other strength of ONDC comes into play, which is what we call unbundling interoperability. So let me start with logistics as a use case and explain it step by step. First, let's start the domestic example. Okay. Again, I'm a jam seller from Meerut. Okay. I get an order on the ONDC network. I have the option that, okay, maybe I have a courier service who can courier it to the person, which is fine. There's provision for that. But if I don't, maybe I'm too small, or maybe this is an area where I have no idea. You can buy logistics as a service on the network, right? So you want, hey, I have to send this jam to Bombay. The network will provide you 15 options. You can choose based on lowest price, availability, quality, reviews, whatever, the usual way you choose that. So every layer of transaction is actually a service on the network which is available, right? So you want to, and of course you differentiate. So I want to sell within Meerut, I'll send my own boy to deliver it. I want to sell it to Delhi, I have a person who can just take it there. Bombay, I need to buy a domestic provider. Singapore, right? There are international logistics is not nothing new, right? It's about, hey, I have this jam, there's a customer which has signed off on the order. Can I get international shipper, a forwarding company who can just help me ship it to Singapore? Yes, right. So that is how logistics works. Similarly for payments, right? Payments, In fact, all financial services on the network are now going live. So payments has been there since day one, but we are also bringing in credit. We are also bringing in insurance. So you want to ship internationally, you will not only need to manage payments, but you also need to manage insurance on top of it, right? You also need to manage escrow services on top of it. All of those are available on the network. And in fact, since ONDC is funded by uh, most of the top banks in India, you can imagine those product offerings are actually quite sharp.
Okay. All right. So now effectively, the primary focus from a globalization point of view, that we are trying to onboard more buyers internationally. And what are the efforts on that front?
So, if I talk about the global perspective, I say that there are four legs broadly which we are focusing on, and actually, I will talk about the just selling abroad as the last piece because that is the most obvious piece of the puzzle, right?
Right.
You will be able to sell more to more customers online. Great, fine, that is done. What is more interesting for me is, let's say, number one, if you're a startup, okay, you can scale very rapidly and very profitably and very sustainably using ONDC. And that is why, for instance, people like Google are we are already running a program called Build for Bharat, which helps startups with funding to do that. Now, how does it work? uh, let's take a problem statement. Let's say you are a startup which is very good at image recognition, okay, which means you are you develop a product which helps small sellers develop digital catalogs very, very well, right? I take a photo of this bottle. If I'm a small businessman, I'm an MSME, where I get beaten is how to create a beautiful catalog around it, how do I write beautifully about it. Now, the technologies like LLM and image processing already exist, right? This startup is able to build a solution which says, okay, click a photo and I'll do the rest for you reliably. In the non ONDC world, now they will need to sell their product or service, or their service, in fact, to large companies 500 times, or build an app, e-commerce app all around it, right? In the ONDC world, they can just sell cataloging or product image cataloging as a service on the network. Everyone who's trying to bring a seller can just ping this service and say, hey, can I now take your service dynamically? So without doing anything else, you yourself makes yourself compatible on the network. You are accessible to a global audience. Now, for global companies or even for Indian startups, that becomes a great opportunity to scale and hence attract investment. That is one. Second is, and going on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, if you're a large conglomerate in India, and fortunately, I have public statements, public positions by companies like Unilever to lean back on that here. Unilever, for instance, has announced that they are launching a program to onboard 1 lakh or 10 lakh, I'm not sure, Kirana stores on ONDC network. Now, what's their perspective there? Their perspective is that uh, digitization of the entire value chain, right? Uh, you want to access consumers, you want to access producers, you want to access logistics, you want to access suppliers domestically and globally. You want to enable those suppliers or retailers with financing options, with insurance options, with logistics options. You can do it all through the ONDC network. So that becomes the perspective. Now, finally, third is, if you are a global manufacturer or whatever, you're trying to enter Indian market, the both lucrative as well as challenging Indian markets. Uh, you rather than establishing an absolutely new value chain or distribution chain, whether you want to expand using digital footprint, so you want to set up your own warehouses, quick delivery, logistics, or you want to actually place your products on the shelves of retailers here, right? Both of them, again, I'm not saying that's available immediately, but that is the perspective of NDC, that you should be able to do that. You should be able to enter Indian markets much more easily. And conversely, as more and more global companies integrated with ONDC. So what I find it interesting about the Proxter example in Singapore, they didn't have to build a new app. Whatever consumer base they had, they just plugged in a small technology layer and voila, all their buyers are now available to the Indian market. Uh, every country, every developing economy on the world is now developing their own apps, their own systems. Plugging that and then having that rapid access was what is the real global opportunity. And lastly, I mean, if I have to, if we assume for a second that ONDC might be the future, it actually puts Indian startups, Indian companies in a great position because uh, this is the made in India concept. If you learn how to do e-commerce in India, replicating it globally is actually very, very lucrative, relatively easy. And ONDC obviously adds that layer of ease that, okay, technology becomes easier, global migration becomes easier.
Oh, wonderful. And so, it's not just a B2C, but there seems to be a huge number of B2B related products and services moving through this. Startups are crucial for any ecosystem, right? And you have to have that investment, and the startups have to put up their hand and say that, look, I'm going to be available, I'm going to invest in technology, I'm going to invest in teams, the cataloging, whatnot. If you can point out some of the examples of startups that have, and when I say startups, let's not now count Paytm as a startup, right? What are the examples where companies have taken an opportunity, really said that, look, ONDC is the way forward, built something, and that has started to give them traction? I think a couple of those examples would really help.
So again, I'll try to limit it to obviously what's public information, but one example actually I would like to start, which I've already kind of hinted at, is JustPay. So JustPay is a tech startup which was typically associated with payments, right? You see that JustPay screen very often when you're trying to pay. Now, JustPay, because they believed in ONDC, started in mobility, ONDC mobility as a pilot, and now obviously they are one of the largest. Certainly, they are one of the largest players in ride hailing in India through their product number Yatri in less than a year. So that is one very tangible example of how quickly a startup can scale. A pure tech payment startup is now making a huge splash in the mobility space, which is something which you wouldn't think of daily. Similarly, if I have to give other examples, we had this company called Kiko Life. I'm not sure if many have heard of them. They started rather late on ONDC, but they said, we are doing our research, we are going to work hard, and we are going to identify the problem statement. So I can't post the numbers publicly, but effectively they are one of the fastest growing startups enabling grocery stores on ONDC. Uh, and I will insist that you access public information around that. Similarly, on a very other end of the spectrum, we had companies like Plotch, Plotch. Now, very, very small company, very smart people. They said, this ONDC is great, but people will find it tough to implement this technology. Or if you want to run the first experiment, especially you want a technology provider to do it. So they made themselves the ONDC specialists, and they have grown like anything, right? So we see, again, there are a lot of also deals, because I don't remember the numbers and which is public, I won't make public statements around it, but we already seeing that VC ecosystem activating in terms of actual deals, acquisitions happening in the startup space. And again, the good thing about this is when I name any of these companies, they're absolutely not the names you have heard of now. I would say there are many of them will be the ones you will be shopping from tomorrow, hopefully. And yeah, that's where we are.
Okay. With respect to protocols, and when you're talking about managing such a huge network, and as the data is growing, security starts to become a question mark, and a lot of people sort of will raise, that is it secure? Are the is our data being collected somewhere? What about private information, personal information, and so on? So, if you can demystify that, please.
Sure. And again, one of the FAQs, which is not just asked by the media, but the board and of course the government also. First thing, fortunately, ONDC does not have any data. So I explain it this way. Uh, we are a post office. Okay. I get letters from and to. I forward wherever I read the to address and I forward it. I don't know what's written in the envelope, right? What's inside the envelope is the transaction details and the PII and the business critical information, right? So all ONDC does is pass signals from person A to person B while searching, and then after that, it's a peer-to-peer transaction. ONDC actually gets absolutely no consumer information, absolutely no business information. Uh, the only thing that we ask our participants to share with us, which is again aggregated and anonymized and cleaned up, is health data. So just enough data for us to make sure that the network is working fine. Again, and this is we are developing that model now to make it public. So whatever access we have, you also have. We also had third party scrutiny, and we invited multiple times scrutiny of our systems to test with secure we are. So which the again, as I said, and going back to my earlier point, the good thing about ONDC is because it's simple. The scope for those wiggle rooms and those gray areas is less. Uh, so yeah, actually we don't have any data. In fact, that was one of the primary design considerations right from the beginning of ONDC, that we don't want to be a store of value in any way, shape, or form. We are a non-profit organization. We are a infrastructure. So my job is to build roads for people to drive in. I am not interested in collecting license plates.
All right, that's nicely put. And are there therefore checks and balances that ONDC puts automatically on the buyer apps and sellers app to ensure that I mean, again, whatever data is being passed through via the ONDC network is also secure?
So here is how it works. Number one, a nothing better than Bharat Sarkar. Okay. So the one of the fundamental so any participant which signs up on NDC, in fact, it's the same agreement. If they sign a network participant agreement, it's a public document. Whether you are someone as large as Google or someone you're a 2-person college startup, two students are trying to do something, you sign the exact same document. Number one, what that document says is, hey, we expect you to follow all laws of the land. Number one, and if something and we hold the power to remove you from the network if you are found doing something fishy. Number one. At the same time, as ONDC, we're also very clear we are not the regulator. That's not our job, right? So, and if I have to kind of draw tangents, even in payments market, RBI is a regulator, not NPCI. Like, so that's the kind of construct we have. We are not the regulator. The government passes laws or the government passes regulations. Our job is to make sure that that is adhered to. That's it. And if we find someone in contravention to that, then we will take appropriate action around it.
All right. How would you, what was the advice that you would give to, I mean, there are a lot of people here who are possibly involved in businesses that include e-commerce or some form of retail, even if it's not what would be a good place for them to start and explore their ONDC journey? Because India is obviously at a cusp. I mean, the domestic boom in e-commerce and retail is just going to continue as a trend for a long time. And if we are able to layer in the global expansion, where we are also enabling Indian retailers and sellers to go global in a big way, I think that is going to be a promise of the e-commerce growth over the next at least decade, if not much longer. So, what would be your advice to people who are going to explore ONDC and how to go about leveraging it?
So here is the question I would ask you. Uh, if I ask you that, hey, is it important to have a website for your business, even a single page website? You would obviously say, in most cases, you will say yes, that, a website is just where people will find, even if all I give on my website is my contact information. If I talk about my business, people want to go somewhere digitally and just access my website or LinkedIn page or whatever. 5 years from now, maybe sooner, having your catalog of products or services visible on the ONDC network is going to be as innocuous or as obvious as having a website, having any kind of digital presence. So you should not think about ONDC as just e-commerce. If you're in any kind of business, buying, selling product or service, reach out to us, because I think you will find the scope for digital transformation to be quite immense. We have had people like McKinsey saying, this is a $300, $400 billion opportunity for India. And that, of course, transcends not just in retail, but across sectors. So that's starting point one. And how do you experience ONDC? As someone pointed out earlier, uh, in some ways, maybe you won't even realize soon that you're using ONDC, and you will be. So most people who on the street today who accept a UPI payment do not really understand how UPI works, but they use that code payment every day. So right now we have a few apps. All of them are available on our website. And in general, we like to have more conversations with you. So happy to help you explore perhaps India's largest digital transformation opportunity in the last decade and the decades to come.
Fantastic. Thank you, Saransh. Before we go, any questions, if we can take a couple of them from the audience?
How are you competing with players like Amazon, Flipkart? So definitely they have the big marketplace, they have all the products.
So, two parts to the response. Okay, two parts to the response. Number one, I don't think we are competing with them. Okay, uh, because as I said earlier, Indian e-commerce is 3% to 6% of commerce in India, right? So you are talking about, hey, who has the largest share of that 3 to 6%? I am talking about how do I move it to 40 to 50%. Number one. So number two, that I think they also have opportunities with ONDC, as bluntly as that. We've always maintained we want them actually to participate in ONDC. In fact, it's my firm belief that they will sooner or later. Third is that forget even I am not talking about Bharat, right? Like I can even explain to you that you are not all your services certified on Amazon. So I am a avid Amazon buyer, right? If you are an avid Amazon buyer, recently this happened. I'll just give you an anecdote. A couple of days back, there was a puja at my home. Okay, my parents stay in Pune, they stay far. So I have taught them through pandemic very after a lot of effort, mummy, papa, this is how you order online. They're still uncomfortable with it, but they wriggle and they do it. But there was a puja at home. So, for in my household for puja, you need that nariyal, you need that pan ka patta, you need that bhagwan ka that red clothes and whatnot. And can you find that online? Very little. At least my parents couldn't. I couldn't find it for them, right? Uh, I my parents again in Pune love garden vada pav. If anyone from Pune is from, yeah. So a vast majority of actually commerce in India is still offline, right? And our job is to get that digital market access. We are not here to compete against this or that. That's actually not the lens that we take. Uh, Another way of explaining this is how my MD does it. He says, if you want to have chai, you can go to a 5-star or you can go to a tapri wala. Okay? You go to a 5-star, you pay 300, 400 rupees for a chai. If it's slightly cold, you can raise an eyebrow and they'll, I'm really sorry, sir, well, let me change the tea for you. You go to the tapri wala, 10 rupees ki chai. Okay? Try telling him, sir, chai thandi hai. You will have a slightly different response. Here's the thing. The consumer expectation, forget the consumer base. I, as a consumer, go both to the 5-star and the tapri wala. My expectation from both is different, right? Second point, you cannot argue that only 5-stars or only tapri walas should exist. Both have space in the Indian market. Why is it not true for digital?
Yeah, I think I just want to also add that if you speak to a lot of, just from an e-commerce point of view, with retailers who are active on those platforms and hear some of the challenges they face, can there be a solution for those challenges? I think that'd be an interesting question. Okay, one last one. Do we have a mic there?
Yes, we are finding that, lot of these hyperscaler and big techs, as far as e-commerce is concerned, own the entire ecosystem, as far as cloud services is concerned. As far as, even the physical logistics, warehouses, etc., they are concerned. And in fact, even when marketing, they go in for aggressive predatory kind of marketing where they lower the prices to gain market share. So where do you see that ONDC will be able to take that thing forward?
Okay, so I think there were multiple arguments to make there, but effectively I'll pick up one thread because that's what at least I'm familiar with in terms of aggressive marketing and discounting. Here is again my personal view on this. If someone can subsidize 1.4 billion people for 10 years and give them a lot of discounts, I'm happy. Wherever that money is coming from, if they can subsidize at a population scale, they're welcome to do it. I don't think anyone can, right? So you will see even with those players that it's difficult. At the same time, again, we are not a regulator. So part of it, how do you stop predatory pricing or how do you stop other market malpractice actually resides with the government. So that's not where I will reach again.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Saransh, for taking the time out and really demystifying ONDC. I think a lot of bare bones discussion Saransh covered for us today. And I do hope that all of you do go and try a transaction on some of the apps. By the way, it's not like you go on ondc.com and do a transaction, just to clarify. So go on one of the buyer apps that are part of the ONDC network and try it out for yourself.
As was my opening statement, we are not an app or a platform.
Well, on that note, thank you so much, gentlemen. And